The 2026 World Cup kicks off on June 11th. But the game you're about to watch is not quite the same game you've been watching for the last 4 years. One of these new rules can get a player sent off simply for covering his mouth during a confrontation. Another can turn a routine goal kick into a corner for the opposition. Another gives VAR powers we've never seen before, and one could completely change how managers coach knockout matches. These aren't small adjustments buried in the rulebook. They are changes designed to influence behavior, speed up the game, increase transparency, and eliminate some of football's most controversial loopholes. And here's the real question. Which of these new rules will actually change what happens on the pitch? Because some will barely be noticed. Others could decide who wins the World Cup. Let's break down every major change coming to World Cup 26 and figure out which one matters most. This is the biggest World Cup in history. Before we get to the laws themselves, the tournament has already undergone its biggest transformation ever. For the first time, 48 nations will compete instead of 32. The tournament will feature 12 groups of 4 teams. The top 2 teams from each group will qualify automatically. The 8 best third-place teams will also advance. For the favorites, it's a new challenge, because the teams that survive 7 or 8 high-intensity matches won't simply be the most talented. They'll be the ones that manage fatigue, injuries, and squad rotation better than everyone else. Depth has always mattered at World Cups. This year, it might matter more than ever. Rule 1. Cover your mouth, get sent off. This is probably the most shocking rule change of the entire tournament, and it exists because of a very specific controversy. In February 2026, Real Madrid's Vinicius Jr. accused Benfica's Gianluca Prestiani of directing a discriminatory slur at him during a Champions League match. The difficulty for investigators was that Prestiani had covered his mouth while speaking. Officials couldn't properly verify what was said. The incident triggered widespread debate and eventually led FIFA and IFAB to act. From this World Cup onward, any player who deliberately covers their mouth with a hand, arm, or shirt during a confrontational situation will receive an automatic red card. Not a warning, not a yellow card, a straight red. Now imagine this scenario. It's the 88th minute of a World Cup quarter-final. Tempers are boiling over. Players are arguing after a controversial decision. One player instinctively covers his mouth while speaking to an opponent. Seconds later, he's walking down the tunnel. That single moment could change an entire tournament. There is an important exception. The law specifically targets confrontational situations. Friendly conversations between players won't be punished, but in high-pressure knockout football, referees will be watching carefully. And players will need to completely change habits they've had for years. Rule 2. Walk off in protest, you're off. This rule also emerged from a real controversy. During the Africa Cup of Nations final between Morocco and Senegal, players left the pitch in protest over a penalty decision. The incident sparked questions about what should happen when teams refuse to continue playing. Now the answer is clear. Any player who leaves the field to protest a referee's decision will be shown a red card. Any team official who encourages such behavior can face the same punishment. And if a team causes a match to be abandoned, it will forfeit the game. The significance of this rule goes beyond discipline. For years, football has struggled with mass protests and attempts to pressure referees. This law sends a simple message. Once a decision is made, teams must continue playing. The era of dramatic walk-offs as a negotiating tactic appears to be over. Rule 3. VAR just became more powerful. Love VAR or hate VAR, this may be the rule change that affects the most matches. When VAR was introduced, its role was relatively narrow. Goals, penalties, red cards, mistaken identity. Now its authority is expanding. First, VAR can intervene if a player is wrongly shown a second yellow card leading to a dismissal. Second, VAR can correct mistaken identity when referees discipline the wrong player. And third, this is potentially the biggest change of all. VAR can intervene when an attacking foul occurs before a corner kick is delivered. That means set-piece goals are about to face greater scrutiny than ever before. Think about how many goals in modern football come from corners. Think about the blockers, the screeners, the subtle pushes, the wrestling matches inside the penalty area. Now imagine every one of those actions being reviewed in slow motion. FIFA's own example referenced England's goal against Uruguay in March 2026, where a blocking action before the delivery would likely have triggered a review under the new rules. For years, set-piece coaches have become some of the most influential figures in football. This rule could force many of them back to the drawing board. Or is FIFA making the game more complicated than it needs to be? Let me know in the comments, because some of the changes coming up might divide opinion even more. Rule 4. The 5-second countdown football has spent years trying to eliminate time wasting. Now FIFA is introducing a rule with real consequences. When a throw-in or goal kick is awarded, referees will visibly begin a 5-second countdown. If the restart isn't taken in time, possession changes hands. And if a goalkeeper fails to take a goal kick within the limit, the opposition receives a corner kick. Not a warning, not a yellow card, an immediate punishment. That's what makes this different. Teams protecting narrow leads have traditionally relied on slowing the game whenever possible. Taking extra touches, waiting for teammates to reposition, running precious seconds off the clock. Those habits now come with genuine risk, and that could dramatically increase the amount of football actually being played. Expect more frantic endings, expect fewer delays, and expect players to feel pressure every time the clock starts ticking. Rule 5. FIFA just closed a tactical loophole. This may be the most underrated change in the entire tournament. Over the last few years, managers discovered a clever loophole. Whenever a goalkeeper went down injured, players would drift toward the touchline. Managers would gather them together. Tactical instructions would be delivered. Shape adjustments would be discussed. It effectively became an unofficial timeout. FIFA noticed, and FIFA decided to stop it. Referees now have the authority to prevent players from approaching the bench area for tactical discussions during these stoppages. That means fewer opportunities for managers to intervene during matches, and it increases the importance of leadership on the pitch. Captains, veterans, midfield generals. They may become even more valuable because tactical communication must increasingly happen between players themselves. In knockout football, where tiny adjustments often decide games, this could prove hugely significant. Rule 6. Water breaks become a new battlefield. Officially, these breaks are about player welfare. Unofficially, they're about tactics. Every match at the 2026 World Cup will feature mandatory 3-minute water breaks midway through each half. The reason is obvious. Many host cities will experience significant summer heat. But managers immediately recognized another benefit. These breaks provide structured opportunities to reorganize teams, adjust plans, and respond to what they're seeing on the pitch. In effect, every match now contains multiple mini-team talks, and the smartest coaches will use them to make real tactical adjustments. The break itself isn't the story. How teams use it might be. Which rule will define this World Cup? Every one of these changes matters. Some will influence player behavior. Some will influence referees. Some will influence coaches. But which one is most likely to shape the tournament? The 5-second countdown will affect almost every match. The protest and mouth-covering rules carry the greatest risk of dramatic individual moments. One emotional reaction could send a player off in a knockout game. But if we're talking about the rule most likely to directly impact results, it's probably the expanded powers of VAR, because VAR doesn't just influence behavior, it changes outcomes. One review can erase a goal. One review can alter momentum. One review can decide who advances and who goes home. And in a World Cup where the margins are already thin, that influence could be enormous. The 2026 World Cup is already the largest in football history. Now it's also the most technologically monitored, the most tightly regulated, and potentially the most unpredictable. What's fascinating is that every one of these changes came from a real incident, a confrontation, a protest, a controversial corner, a loophole managers discovered and exploited. Football's lawmakers looked at those moments and decided the game needed to evolve. Whether they've improved football or complicated, it is a debate we'll be having throughout this tournament. But one thing seems certain. By the time the World Cup trophy is lifted, there's a very good chance one of these new rules will have changed the outcome of a match we'll be talking about for years. Which rule do you think will have the biggest impact? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more World Cup coverage throughout the tournament. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.